Hi, my name's Renee Dantes, and I'm an archivist in the Research Center for Panhandle-Plains Historical Museum in Canyon, Texas. Thank you for joining me today. I have something for Book Lovers Day. I am very fortunate to be surrounded by so many great titles, and today I am going to share one with you that I discovered while doing research on a thesis project. In 1925, a book was published called The Wind, and I don't know about anybody else who's lived in West Texas, but it's something we're very familiar with. I actually have a friend who warns us to be careful when we're driving or whenever we're just out and about on really windy days, because we all know that can make us a little crazy. It's sort of a phenomenon we live with every day here in West Texas. Well, there's a reason that this book in 25 was published anonymously, and that's because they were afraid that there may be backlash for the author because of the accusation that the wind can make us a little crazy. So this is the first edition that we do have up here in the Research Center. It is published under anonymous. Later that year, though, they did actually go ahead and print a second edition, and it was carrying the author's name. Her name is Dorothy Scarborough, and she was on the East Coast whenever she wrote the book. She was living in New York, and so they were afraid that a Yankee writing about West Texas may not go over too well. But what a lot of people didn't know about Dorothy is she actually lived in Sweetwater at the time that this was set, and she wrote it in the distant past for a good reason, which was because the present in 25, it just didn't work anymore. In the 1880s, there was drought. There were a significant number of windstorms. Cattle prices had dropped, and things were hard for the people in West Texas, and that's what this book is set in. Letty, their main character, she was forced to leave her home in the lush Virginia countryside and came to a place that was rather barren and in her standards, and she was in an unfamiliar place with a distant relative, and she was in a small house, one room really, other than a set of bedrooms, or set for a place for a bed and a kitchen, with several other people, and that's where the conflict starts. So there's love intrigue, there is dealing with the issues of cattle prices being low, the challenges of settling in a place that really didn't mean to be settled in, and then you have the wind. And it's the thing that is carried throughout as a character in and of itself. And it's interesting, the title of the book gives it no clue as to what the actual story is going to be about. But if you read the excerpts of one of the later editions, especially the one on the cover, you get a sense that it may be a little more complicated than you might imagine. So the front cover of this says, "How could a frail, sensitive woman fight the wind? A ghost more terrible because invisible, that wailed to her across the waste places in the night, calling to her like a demon lover." Well, it's not maybe as salacious as all that, but it definitely does have a bit of intrigue. It does focus on Letty, who has to face these challenges of the Wild West, as some people would call it, and the ways that they would entertain themselves, and then also what happens whenever a young person comes to the area and has to live a life. She's in relationships, and then of course that wind does affect her in some very interesting ways, to the point of madness. And it's a very good read. I enjoyed it very much. This actually was made into a movie in 1928, and they filmed in the Mojave Desert to get a true sense of the blowing wind and what happens with the sand and the movement of so much dirt in one particular place. Another really interesting thing about this book is its accuracy. So if you are from West Texas, I would suggest giving it a read because you're going to find a lot of familiarities. She describes the railroad, the flora and fauna that are in our area, everything from Sweetwater up to and through the Texas Panhandle, and it's very familiar, and you might find yourself relating just a little bit with our character Letty, and you may completely understand why the madness occurs, and you're probably not going to feel bad for her. Thanks for joining me today for Book Lovers Day, and remember that we are a resource that's happy to help any way we can, and we hope to see you here at the museum soon.